Hey, what's up? It's Randy. Now, I swear we're at the weirdest stage in the audio tech industry. Let me know if you agree with this, but I feel like audio tech is a little bit stagnant at the moment. I'm kind of waiting for like the next big thing to come out, but it seems like every company wants a piece of the same pie, and we end up with things like SM7B knockoffs and SM58 knockoffs and U87 knockoffs. And I'm just waiting for the next really cool piece of gear. And then out of nowhere, Lauten Audio comes out with this total weird oddball microphone that I absolutely love, and is quickly becoming one of my favorite microphones in my collection. But of course, you're not here to hear me blab, you're here for the sound test. So let's do some sound tests, and then we'll talk about some pros and cons of this microphone and where I really think this microphone shines. Okay, let's take a listen now how the Lauten Audio sounds on pop vocals. So I put together a little bit of a demo here. My wife is going to sing on it, and the acoustic guitar and some of the percussion elements were recorded with the Lauten microphone as well.
When you were just a stranger, there was something I fell for. You always left me wanting more. I know we've had a lot of ups and downs, but I'm so glad you've always been around for me. And hey, baby, this is fate, and you were worth the wait.
I brought this microphone out to a gig that I played a few weeks back. It was like a folk gig, and I was playing bass, and I wanted to see how this would sound on a bass cab. So I put this on a stereo bar beside a Sennheiser MD421, and let's hear how they sound on an electric bass. Okay, so I got both mics loaded into Pro Tools here. So channel 1, the top one here, is the Lauten Audio, and the channel 2 is the Sennheiser MD421. So let's take a listen to the Lauten first, and I'll show you kind of when we switch over. And switch. And switch. Okay, I think after listening to that, I think that the Lauten Audio is a little bit more like mid-scooped. I'm kind of hearing a little bit of that sort of like smile EQ curve. Like if you take a listen here, it's a good sub. And there's really nice like articulation in the top end. The Sennheiser MD421 still has that articulation in the top end, but it's like got a little bit more, I want to say like 1 kilohertz. Do you hear that sort of bitey like mid-range? Right at the top of the note, like on the transient, there's a little bit more. Versus if we listen to the Lauten Audio, a little bit more subby. It could be a little bit due to mic placement too. I tried to line them up both on the cone in the exact same spot. But yeah, I think I'm definitely hearing a little bit of a difference. What's better? I mean, it's totally going to depend on what you're looking for in your mix, but kind of nice to know how this stacks up against a 421, because I know a lot of people like to use a 421 on bass cabs, so this gives you a bit of an idea of how the Lauten compares. But I think that my absolute favorite use case for this microphone is just having this readily available on a boom arm like this. Having a condenser microphone readily available means you're not sacrificing anything. With all the built-in tools that they have on this mic, it just makes it a real workhorse for sitting beside your desk. Now, you've been listening to this microphone this whole time in case it wasn't abundantly obvious, and this is kind of the intended purpose for this microphone, to be sort of brought in on a boom arm, used in sort of like a podcast or streaming type of setup. So let's call this the podcast sound sample, and this is kind of how it sounds in a relatively untreated space. Now, before you say, wouldn't a dynamic microphone make more sense for an untreated room? No, this is actually a massive audio myth, and it's been busted by numerous publications. In fact, Sound on Sound released a publication completely busting this one wide open. I released a video with some sound samples. I will link that down below, but this is just an audio myth. Polar pattern and signal to noise ratio are the only two things that determine what a microphone is able to pick up. So rest assured, this microphone is going to be great even for untreated spaces, so long as you get close enough to it and you're speaking on the correct side of the microphone. It's really that simple. It doesn't matter if it's a dynamic, condenser, or ribbon. Now, before we go down to the isolation booth and do our noise test, Lauten Audio is kind enough to send this microphone over to me for the purposes of this review video as well as comparison videos in the future. Now, they were very specific when I spoke with them about making sure that I use this pop filter. I guess they've built the microphone with compensation in mind, so they're compensating for the fact that this is going to darken the sound of the microphone. That's my guess as to what's happening. They were just very insistent that I use the pop filter. However, they also sent along this other one from a company called Schultz-Brackle, which I've never heard of before, but it's this bougie, like $30 pop filter. I didn't know that there was a market for $30 pop filters, but I went to this company's website and they just specialize in pop filters. That's like their whole thing, is acoustically transparent pop filters. I didn't know that was an industry, but here we are. So we're gonna test this, and without a pop filter in general, just so you can kind of hear what's going on. So let's start without. So I'm about 4 fingers from the capsule here, and I can already hear there's way more high end in this now. It's very crispy, so I get why they were very insistent that I use this. This is with the included pop filter, and wow, yeah, I didn't expect to be able to hear that difference with my headphones on, because sometimes when you're talking, it's kind of hard to hear those differences in real time. I thought I'd have to hear it in post, but I already hear that quite significantly. Okay, and this is the Schultz-Brackle pop filter. This one is $30. You can actually buy it from the Lauten Audio website. It comes in a Lauten Audio branded box. Check. Testing 1, 2, 3. Included pop filter. Check. Included pop filter. Check. Schultz-Brackle pop filter. Actually, while we're on that, let's test the plosives here. Peter Piper packed a pack of pickled peppers. Peter Piper packed a pack of pickled peppers. Peter Piper packed a pack of pickled peppers. Interesting. I actually find, I'm not sure if you guys would agree with this listening at home, but I find that the Schultz-Brackle pop filter is actually doing a better job with plosives as well. I really like the sound quality of it. So I think that the Schultz-Brackle pop filter, I actually prefer it, at least when I'm listening on cans. It's maintaining some of that high end. It's not quite as muffling as this one. I think that's what my ears are telling me while I'm speaking, but you guys may hear something different at home. So let me know which one you prefer, but let's keep this one on for the rest of the video. All right, let's head down to my wife's Studiobricks and we'll go do our practical noise test. Okay, we are inside of my wife's Studiobricks isolation booth. Now this booth is 45 decibels of soundproofing from exterior sound, so it is very, very quiet in here. Now I'm going to take this section of recorded dialogue and move it into isotope, and in there I'm going to normalize the entire audio file so that it's sitting around -23 LUFS, which is sort of a broadcast standard for loudness. And then we can take a section of that silence, and we want to see the silence sitting below -60 dB. And as you can see, it's sitting below that here at -63, so I'd call that pretty good. Okay, let's go through the tone shaping that they have on this microphone. So I'm going to try to keep myself directly centered on this, so I'm not going to be looking at the camera too much. This is with nothing on, no tone shaping at all. So right now this is cutting at 50 hertz, which you probably shouldn't hear much of a difference because I can't speak down to 50 hertz anyways. Check. Okay, now I've rolled off everything below 120 hertz, and I definitely start hearing that a little bit now. That's probably going to be great for most speakers because most people aren't speaking below around 100 hertz anyway, so it's just going to get rid of all of the noise. Now it's back to normal. There is nothing on, and I'm going to go to the top end and I'm going to cut 10K. So now there is a 10 kilohertz cut. Everything above 10K is being filtered out, and I'm going to go ahead and move that to 8 kilohertz. So a little bit more cut now. Now we're down to 8 kilohertz, and you can hear it's quite significant. I don't know that I would ever use this on dialogue. I think it's a little bit too much. It's tough for me to tell with my headphones on. It just sounds a little bit woofy. Very cool for things like a snare drum. I would love to try that on a snare drum. Even like acoustic guitar or things that you know you're just going to push back further in a mix anyways. That's kind of cool. Let's go back to 10K. This is 10K. That's much more usable for like a podcast. I would actually use this setting with 50. So I'm filtering everything below 50 and everything above 10K. And this to me gives me SM7B vibes. It's like easy to listen to. It's not too sharp or too shrill. This is something that I could listen to for hours and hours on end without getting tired of it. So that is a really cool setting with this Schultz Brackle pop filter. And just for argument's sake, I'm gonna switch the pop filter back to the original one, just so we can hear how that sounds. And man, that does sound different, doesn't it? I really notice it somehow in the low end, which is interesting. I didn't think that that would affect the low end. Okay, let's wrap this up with some pros and cons, and let's start off with some of the cons. I'm just gonna tell you right away, I had to really dig for some cons, so take these with a serious grain of salt. Con number one is when you switch these filters, you can actually hear them make a popping sound. Check, 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 check. You can hear that popping sound. Are we calling that a con? I think we are. Just for the reason that it just doesn't feel that premium when you switch and you hear a pop in your ears. You're never going to be switching and recording at the same time, I don't think. So con number two, which I actually think is a reasonable con and definitely worth mentioning, is that this microphone is really, really gain hungry. For context, when I have my shotgun microphone out of frame, it's usually about 8 inches above my mouth. I keep my gain at about plus 42 on my Mix Pre 6. Right now, this is at plus, let's see here, we're at plus 54 to get the same level. And this is only like an inch, well, no, it's about 3 inches away. So yeah, it's significantly more gain required to make this microphone work. So if you're using a really cheap interface, this may not be the best microphone for you because you're gonna have to boost your gain a lot, which will cause a little bit of hiss in your recordings. Okay, now let's chat about the pros, and I have this sort of narrowed down to 3 different pros. Number one is the filtering that you can do, the tone shaping as they call it. I've always seen like low cuts. Those are pretty popular. You can find them on just about every, studio grade condenser microphone, but having high cuts and having them at really cool, tasteful, and artistic levels is really cool. I tend to be the type that's like, don't touch anything on the microphone. Let's just do it all in post. I want to have that control later because I have commitment issues. This has sort of pushed me outside my comfort zone a little bit. Like I recorded acoustic guitar with the 8K cut on it. To me, that seems like a wild thing to do. Like that's, that's not that wild. It feels wild to me. And this has sort of pushed me into that like mindset of, what do I want in the final mix? And can I just achieve that at the microphone and just commit to it now? Pro number two, we kind of already touched on this, but the build quality with this is exceptional. The carrying case that it comes with is top notch. The shock mount is top notch. The other mic clip holder feels really good. The actual microphone itself, I'm convinced I could drop it a few times. And that's not to say that I should, or that's a good way to measure a microphone's quality, but let's be realistic, we're all human. If I drop this, I wanna know that it's gonna work. And this is like machined heavy metal. And the third thing, which is kind of a weird thing to call out, but I'm just gonna call it out anyways, is that the company is really cool to work with. They're like really small, family run, very responsive, and I just really appreciate that a lot. They just seem like really good people to support, so. But that's everything. If you guys have any questions, throw them down in the comments below. Love to know what you guys think of this microphone. I think it's really freaking cool, and this is probably gonna be on my desk forever.